whenever you bring somebody out here, whether you've lived in Traverse City your whole life or you're passing through for the weekend, there's a story to tell here. And it's a unique story, and it's completely one of a kind. So many people know about the Commons and know about the old State Hospital grounds in terms of those historic buildings, but the Barns itself is a very thoughtful story as well.
We call it Historic Barns Park, but there's more than that going on here.
It's incredible. This site is incredible.
When you're working with a legacy site, an old site like this, where the use goes back more than 100 years, you're bound to find some sources of pollution. You're bound to find some things that, based on today's modern science and understanding of these things, you're going to want to get it cleaned up. Really, nothing else can happen until you get that cleanup done.
And so the difficult part becomes how you're going to pay for it, because it becomes pretty costly pretty quick. There was many different funding sources that were put in place through the years, funding through local sources, funding through state sources, and then the final EPA cleanup grant, which really brought this project to fruition and cleaning up the last remaining contaminants on site.
We couldn't have done any of it if we hadn't had the EPA come in and decontaminate the site. I mean, that was like the groundwork that had to be done. And once that was done, we were able to come in and just do amazing things.
It's hard to imagine that this place had contamination. You look at it, it's like this beautiful garden setting. I mean, and rolling hills and historic barns, but I mean, like every other part of a state hospital operation, there were, chemicals and other things being used.
We're particularly proud that this is the first federal support for cleanup activities on the entire Commons campus since the redevelopment started. The entire Commons is a brownfield, and cleanup is one of the more daunting hurdles to clear, to rehab any of the old hospital buildings, from Building 50 down to the smaller cottages, and then all the way down to the former farming operation here at Historic Barns Park.
So many times I feel like you see these tragic loss of old historic buildings, because it is a very difficult thing to piece together funding sometimes in brownfield sites to make sure that they're safe for the human use, for the public. And this is a really good example where people banded together and said, it's too beautiful, there's too much to save here, and really we're reaping the benefits.
One of the things that I always come back to about Historic Barns Park in terms of achievement is that it was born of cooperation. It took Traverse City and Garfield Township deciding to partner on these 3 park properties in the first place. And then it took the voters, the citizens of Garfield Township and Traverse City, to bless the idea and say, yes, this is something that we'll support. We'll tax ourselves because we feel that these parklands are that important, and we think it's such a cool thing to try to preserve these old buildings and place these properties into the public trust. And then from there, that circle has just continued to grow and grow with all of the volunteers and people that have come and helped do work on the park, from writing grants to taking care of the park grounds itself. The evolution of this local parks board, bringing on 3 different nonprofit partners to help manage and see the park grow and develop, is very unique. It's something that this community should be really proud of, that we have the community energy and the community pride to even bother to tackle something like this. It wouldn't have been possible without the support of the EPA. This cleanup grant was integral to enabling all of this redevelopment and reuse. We really couldn't open the buildings up to public use without making sure they were remediated first. There's no way we could have done any of the things we've done so far without this cleanup occurring, and it just happened at a perfect time, and we're very, very grateful for the EPA's Brownfield cleanup program and the great thing it's done for our community.
The Brownfields program was established to deal with properties just like this one. And there are tens of thousands of sites like this across the country where there's some level of environmental contamination. It's not the kind of environmental contamination that is an immediate threat to human health or the environment, but it's the kind of thing that does need to be remediated and dealt with before you can put the building or the site back into a new use. Common types of contamination are, in a historic building like this, will be lead paint and asbestos. We also commonly have to deal with contaminated soils or contaminated groundwater. Every year, EPA gets literally hundreds of grant applications for great projects like this one. I think it speaks to the number of brownfield sites and the creativity of the people who want to deal with them, that in any one year we're only able to award grants to a fraction of those properties. But it's a great program. We end up with great projects like this one. This is a building which, would have sat vacant if the contaminants couldn't have been addressed, if the lead paint and asbestos couldn't have been abated. You would have lost the opportunity for people to see the great construction in this building, the kind of thing that they don't do anymore. Would have missed the opportunity to create a couple new jobs and support local catering industries. And this is like the great thing about the Brownfield program. Not only are we dealing with environmentally contaminated sites, but we're helping put them back into use so they can be sources of local investment and job creation.
We've had a lot of people at work on the different construction projects, the cleanup activities themselves. Local contractors did that work. Our environmental consultant is based here locally. So certainly, temporarily, the rebirth of the site generated some economic benefit to our local economy. But we've also created some full-time jobs. The Botanic Garden staffs a visitor center with a full-time person. We have a full-time event contractor that oversees event operations for the Cathedral Barn, which are specifically designed to keep the building up itself. That anything that we're able to raise through those event rental interviews for the building gets back into the building in terms of maintenance and upkeep. Eventually, all of the things that a building needs, a new roof and those sort of long-term considerations. People have been working on this park property for decades, but if you, even 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, if you would have looked around this site, you wouldn't believe the way it looks today. And none of that would have been possible without the EPA Brownfield cleanup program and the grant we received. It really facilitated all of the redevelopment that you're able to look around the park and see today.
When we think about all the open spaces and parkland and the trails that are so important to the Commons, my mind always comes back to this part of the Commons campus here, the historic Barnes Park, because I think it has the most interesting trails, it has the most interesting terrain, and then when you add the component of how the different users of the historic Barnes Park are making it a better place, it's the best thing to have in our neighborhood.
The focus is the commons and the barns, but this outdoor experience that is a part of this entire area really helps bring visibility and use to the site as well. So many people, how they know the barns is really riding their mountain bike through here, hiking through here to get access to the trails. And so there is a huge network of trails that exist to the west of the site that is just a phenomenal resource for the community. And as people become more aware of the barns and then are able to build on the educational outlet that is really the true vision for the future use of this site, I think that it's just going to help really bring those pieces together for the community and help build on the resource we have here.
Well, when we broke ground in 2013, we really didn't expect things to expand so very quickly. And yet last year, 2016, we already had 15,000 visitors come through just that year. We're up to 300 volunteers that maintain the gardens, that give tours, that help maintain the park. And so it has really blossomed quickly. And it's so hard to believe that less than 4 years ago, it was what it was. But then when you step back and look at the incredible impact this has, I mean, how many people have come here and will come here to kind of reinvigorate themselves in the beauty of this park, to celebrate here with weddings, celebrations of lives, graduations, to take classes here, to learn how to garden in a sustainable manner here. I mean, there are so many, many ways.
I think the thing that you can really point to as a point of pride of this park is an intense amount of collaboration based on the love of the site, the history of the site, the passion that people here locally have for the site, and it's been kind of a magnet for that kind of cooperation. We're going to need it. That's got to continue to grow for us to fully realize the public's vision here. But based on our track record so far, I'm feeling pretty good about the future as well.
And that's important. That's important as we look forward as a community and we look forward to what the next step's really going to be for this park and embracing what we have and preserving it for the generations to come.
It's like dropping a pebble in a pond and all those ripples, but you guys dropped a rock in the pond and they're huge ripples. It's amazing.